What's happening? Please. I have to absolutely, before I begin anything, I have to ask you if you could please join me in thanking the brothers who put this together. Please. Now, I was sitting over there and I was enjoying my chicken. I was talking to a sister that was sitting next to me, and she said something out loud, and I said, "What'd you say?" She said, "Oh, I was just talking to myself." And I said, "Oh, well, you have the same mental illness that I do." And she said, "Talking to yourself must be okay as long as you don't answer yourself." And I said, "So apparently your mental illness is not as bad as mine, because I have good arguments with myself, and I found over time that I make a pretty good roommate for myself." Now, let me say this. You know, when I came to Baltimore, when I was invited to come out here and speak, I started thinking about the city and what I've learned and what I'm learning about the city. Like a lot of other people, I've seen a lot of the things that have happened here. Baltimore is a city that has changed the nation. It's changed conversations all across America based on things that have happened here. Not just Freddie Gray, not just the sister who was killed, unfortunately, but so many other things. And it's interesting when I talk to my friends about Baltimore, I try to help them make sure that they know the conversation goes beyond just the Ravens and the Wire and a couple other things that people know. There's a beautiful community here, a community that's doing amazing things. Now what's so interesting is that Baltimore to me it's a little bit of an enigma. Now, why is it an enigma? It's an enigma to me because when you go to other cities, you see what's going on, you see the power dynamics in their city, and you talk about race issues, and it's pretty clear. You have a plantation, basically. You see the black folks kind of at the bottom scraping along. You see that there are very few black people in the positions of power making all the key decisions. Now, in Baltimore, you don't see that. Y'all got a whole lot of high-powered Negroes up in here. And what's unfortunate is that you got some of these black people that don't care nothing about black people. At least that's not the impression that you get. Now, I'm not talking about all of them. You got some good people here, some that were invited here to speak tonight. And I was sitting there and I was asking the brother to help me give me notes. I was like, so what you think about him? What you think about her? What do you think about this person? Tell me about Marilyn Mosby. I like to try to understand everything. And it's real interesting because Baltimore in some ways kind of leads the conversation, sort of a forerunner to the conversation of just what does that mean for black people to really have power? What does black empowerment actually look like, right? Because you've got all kinds of elected officials that look like you, but you have a lot of communities that are forgotten. Some of the most neglected communities in this country are right here in Baltimore. You know, I tell you what, last time I was here, I was driving around and I'm in the suburbs and it's nice and warm and the sun's shining, the birds are chirping, the weather's warmer, and then I go to some parts of the hood and I'm like, oh my Lord, what has happened here? What has happened here? And when I was actually on a TV thing last night and I was talking about some of these riots, the riots you see in Charlotte and other places, and I said, you think that people are mad about one shooting? You think that we're going to get caught up in the details of who killed who, whether they had a gun, what the cops did, and this, that, and the other? And I said, you know, I think about those things. My father was a cop for 25 years. I've always had respect for law enforcement just because I was raised that way. But I said, you don't understand. People are not upset over one incident. That one incident was the literal and figurative trigger for something bigger. It's a trigger that led people to respond to the fact that you've been neglecting a huge segment of your society for the last 40 years. You started that war on drugs back in the 1970s where you decided you wanted to destroy the black family. You got tired of all that black power stuff. So you said, let's create this war on drugs, which is really a war on black people. And let's take advantage of the 13th Amendment's little clause that says that anybody can be a slave as long as we find some way to label you as a felon. And next thing you know, you're locking up all the fathers, the strongest warriors in the communities, all the men, and especially men, but women as well, that could have been great entrepreneurs and parents and everything else. And then you end up with a situation like Mario Lloyd, a brother I know who's actually from Chicago, who ran a cocaine enterprise. He doesn't deny that. He was very young. And they locked him up in 1987, and they put a RICO charge on him. And they didn't just lock him up. They locked up his mother, his sister, and his brother for about 15 to 20 years apiece, and they gave him life in prison, 14 life sentences with no parole. And so 20 years later, Mario's son dies selling drugs on the same block that his father used to do drugs on. So what's really happening here, what you're seeing here really is something that's been brewing for many, many decades. And it's so funny to me, I hear people talk about the shootings, and they call me up and they say, Dr. Boyce, what do you think about all these black men that have been killed by the police lately? It's just an outrage. What's this trend with black men being killed by the police? I'm like, this ain't no trend. They've been killing brothers for a long time. Y'all just didn't have the cell phones out. They might be killing less now than they did before they knew you were watching. So this is nothing new. This is nothing new. This all goes right back to slavery, and I would argue that if you really want to understand what's happening in these communities, you have to look at your history. You have to understand that it was designed that way. The system was set up that way. When I used to talk to my father's friends who were cops, I understood a long time ago, and I think this is important to understand in Baltimore, where you got so many wealthy black people, that the job of police was not to protect and serve everybody. The job is to protect the white from the black in most communities and the rich from the poor. That's what it does. The last time I was pulled over by a cop was right here in this city, and it was about 2 months ago. And I was sitting in a neighborhood. I didn't know what neighborhood it is. You know, I know that like any other black man, I could be killed anywhere. So I wasn't sitting for too long. I was saying goodbye to my friend, and 2 cops just rolled up on me. And they both looked like me, but they wasn't looking friendly. I didn't feel like they were there to serve and protect anything, not of mine. They rolled up. They didn't look like cops to me. They looked like stormtroopers, just real quiet. And so again, my father being an officer, you know, I just greet police friendly. Hey, how you doing? They didn't say anything to me. They just looked at me. I don't know if they thought I was selling dope. I don't know what they thought I was doing in that car, but I got real nervous. And you think about that, that dynamic. Why should I be scared when the police are running up? Why should young black men feel the need to run away when the police are coming nearby? Well, a lot of times it's because any simple interaction with a police officer can get you incarcerated for no reason. It can get you charged with some little stupid law that you didn't even know about. You can end up dead just because you had a conversation with a cop. And that doesn't exclude me just because I got a PhD and all these master's degrees and all that other stuff. That doesn't matter. Those letters behind my name mean nothing when I'm talking to a police officer. And at that moment, I was very, very nervous. Because here you roll up on me, you're not talking to me, I greet you in a friendly way, and you don't say anything back. You just stare at me. So my friend, you know, doing what black women have done so well, she diffused the situation. She gets out the car and says, hey, do y'all mind? She works at Ebony Magazine. She's a big shot too. She picks all the covers for Ebony Magazine. So we some rich Negroes, right? We supposed to be treated special, right? So she walks up and she's like, hey, can y'all make sure I get to my car safely? And they're like, okay. I don't know what they said. They didn't say much to her. So she went to her car. So I'm driving away. I'm thinking, okay, it's over with. You know, it's all done. I didn't get killed today. I'm straight. So I drive, I make a right, and then a left. Next thing you know, I'm getting pulled over because these fools done ran my plates. And because I'm driving a rental car, they're thinking I stole this car. And so I remember just that concern, that fear, that discomfort I had, where I'm sitting there, I'm being pulled over. I'm like, no sudden moves, hands on the wheel, turn the music down, turn the interior light on. I'm doing everything I can do because I'm literally thinking that if I make one false move, somebody might shoot me today. And you think about this. Now think about this for a second. I'm a 45-year-old black man. I'm not even qualified. I'm not even classified as a young black man anymore. And I'm a 45-year-old black man. I don't break the law. I treat people with respect. And I'm in that same situation as everybody else. And the fact is, many of you probably have similar stories. Like this brother was talking about what happened with him with the cops. And so if you want to understand what's going on in Baltimore and everywhere else, try to think about it from that perspective, and you'll understand all of this. You'll see the death that awaits so many of our young people, not just from other young people, but also from the police that are supposed to serve and protect them. So if cops simply learn how to serve and protect everybody, we could go a long way. But instead, you have certain communities that have been under a police state. That pretty much means that their goal is to keep you in a confined area, to come in and criminalize your children and send them all away. The way they kept you divided is by convincing you that you're not like those other people. That those prison inmates, you know, the ones being shipped off that are being beaten and raped every other day, you're told that they don't matter when the fact is these people are coming right back to your community. This poison is being dropped on your people every single day of the week. So we must understand this system if we're going to fight it. Now, here's the funny part about this speech. I didn't even plan on talking about that. I just thought about it. I thought about Baltimore, and I was thinking about my experience here. And I'm not good at telling lies, so everything I tell you is true. Now let's talk a little bit about wealth. Now, one thing I want you to understand is that whenever I talk about wealth and money, I always see it through the lens of blackness. If I can't see it through the lens of blackness, it has no value to me. Now, what's my background? Okay, thank you. Now, what's the background here? Let me give you the background so you know where all this is coming from. We grew up without much money. I was 17, 18 years old when I had my first girlfriend, and then I messed around and got her pregnant. And we both worked together at Taco Bell, and that's when she got pregnant, and so I learned the hard way, just stay away from tacos. Tacos will get you in trouble. So here I was 18 years old, and I didn't really have parents that really understood everything about life. They didn't really know how to tell me sort of certain things that I might tell you all, because my parents just didn't know. My mother was so young that I think she and I went to elementary school together. I think that when I was in the 4th grade, she was in the 2nd, something like that. And so here I was, this young parent who was the child of a young parent, who was also the child of a young parent, and I'm headed to college. And now, I never made good grades before in my life. I never knew what that was like. I was always the class clown, the kid that they wanted to put on Ritalin and everything else. And so I went to college because I didn't know where else to go. I got kicked out of the house, and so I could either go to Taco Bell again and work there, but I told you tacos will get you in trouble, or I could join the military. Well, the Iraq War was about to start, and I heard that you go to the military, you might get shot. I didn't want to get shot. And so I went to college, not because I belonged there, but because I just thought, well, this will be a place I can go because I don't have anywhere else to go. So they asked me, well, they said, what do you want to major in? And I said, well, what is finance? They said, finance is money. I said, I want to study that. Because I figured if I study money and learn about money, somebody will pay me money to talk about money. And so I began studying, and I didn't know how to study. I just simply leaned on what I learned as a young black man playing sports. Now, I was a good athlete. Like a lot of young brothers, I was fooled into this illusion of going to the NBA or the NFL or whatever it is that you think you're going to do, which is kind of sad because I know a lot of guys who are in the NFL, and they don't understand that the average career span of an NFL athlete is only about 3 years. So really, NFL doesn't stand for National Football League. It actually stands for not for long. And the truth of the matter is that, you know, when you're done, you're not just sort of dipped out into the world with almost no marketable skills in many cases, but you also might have a little brain damage to go with it. The vast majority of NFL players have significant brain damage, maybe drug addictions from all those painkillers you got to take just so you can stay on the field. So some of the things that we're taught to believe are the fantasy, are really not the fantasy. They're actually feeding you a nightmare. They're feeding your young boys nightmares. And it's an organized structural kind of destruction because in every single community, I don't really see sort of structured ways to educate black children on wealth building and ways to be empowered African Americans, but I'm always seeing a Pee Wee football league in every community. If you don't believe me, go have a baby that's maybe above average in size by the age of 6. And somebody's always gonna walk up and say, so when you gonna bring your son out for football? My son ain't coming out for football. My son, he can play football after he does all the things that matter. But football is not his ticket for success. So I applied everything I learned from sports, and I just said, okay, well, I'm gonna treat it like practice. And because I wanted to be a college athlete, but I wasn't good enough. And I would sit down, and people say, you going to study, man? I'd be like, no, I'm going to practice. And I was trying to figure out, well, how long should you study to make good grades? And I said, well, if I go to work 9 hours a day, 10 hours a day at Taco Bell, I can study for 4 or 5 hours a day. That's pretty easy. And I didn't really know that college students don't do that. I mean, go up to a college student and tell them they should study 5 hours a day and see how quick they look at you like you're crazy. Oh, Lord, I can't do that. That's too much. That's going to kill me. You're too serious, right? But it's so funny because that same person, you'll see kids go to college and have perfect, pristine step shows because they've been practicing every day for months, but they're making C's in every class. I mean, that just trips me out. Nothing wrong with step shows. I'm not anti-step show. But the step show is not going to take care of you when you're getting older. That's not how you're going to pay your bills. You're not going to be a professional stepper. So, and here's the funny part. Here's the other funny thing. It's real interesting to me that same student who tells you they can't possibly study 5 hours a day will go work at McDonald's or Wendy's or someplace, and they will work 8 or 9 hours a day like clockwork. If they're told to come to work every day, you're going to work from 9 to 6 every day, they do it. Now, to me, again, using my 18-year-old logic, I'm a young father, I don't know nothing at this point. My logic was, why would I spend 9 or 10 hours a day working for somebody else's dream and not be willing to put 4 or 5 hours a day into building my own dream? Why would I work that hard? Why would I work that hard for minimum wage when I wouldn't work half as hard for something that's going to stay with me for the rest of my life. And over time, I figured it out. That's a slave mentality. Some of us work hard when somebody makes us work hard, but when it comes to working hard for yourself, for your community, for the people you love, for the things that matter to you, you don't take that as seriously. I'm not talking about you. This is the figurative you. Because when I say you, if it's not you, it's somebody you know. Because we all know people that got that mindset. So that led down to the building blocks in terms of understanding all this. So years go by, I finally figured out that I can do the whole college thing. In fact, I did it really well. Actually, college was quite easy. I was really kind of disappointed that it wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. And so I went on and I got my PhD and I started teaching at a university. I'm teaching all these white kids and I'm bored to death and it's driving me crazy. And I started thinking about what success really looks like. You see, because I'd grown up believing that success meant going to school, working hard, getting a good job, and making a good paycheck. But I didn't feel successful. I felt like everything I was doing was a complete waste of time. I said, here I am, I'm babysitting all these rich kids. None of them look like me. The people in my community need what I know, and I'm not giving it to them. Why? Well, because they can't afford it necessarily. So this ain't working. This ain't right. I'm told I'm successful, but I don't feel successful. This job that I have, this ain't really my job. If I die tomorrow, they're going to just give it to somebody else. This little paycheck I'm getting, yeah, me and mine are okay, but my community's suffering. So it was almost like being an expert chef when you got your grandmother down the street starving to death. And you making gourmet meals for perfect strangers, but your own family can't eat because they can't afford to eat at your restaurant. So given that I knew that most black people can't afford $50,000 a year to go to Syracuse, I decided to become an entrepreneur. I didn't know nothing about entrepreneurship. I had to start all over again. It's very hard to humble yourself when you're in your 30s and you're told you have all this education, right? And you really realize that your whole life you never really learned the things you need to know in order to provide for yourself. And then on top of that, you're going to work every day and you got these bosses that basically are looking at you in a funny way. And I started letting them know I started being black in public. And when you do that, you know, you get in trouble. They start looking at me as the dangerous Negro, the bad guy, especially when I went on TV and started talking more on TV. It was like, oh, no, we got to get rid of this guy. The stuff he's saying about race, it might be true, but we don't really want people like this around here. So it got real messy, and it got me really thinking about what it means to be free, what it means to have power, what it means to be strong in this country. So fast forward. Everything's fine. Everything worked out. I'm making my money. I'm running my business. That's not the point here. That doesn't matter. What matters is maybe there are things I can share with you that we can share with our children so they don't have to spend 30 or 40 years figuring out the game. Because America, in case you don't know it, America is rigged. America is a rigged society. It is rigged in favor of people who own businesses, people who invest, and people who own property and land. And when you look at the gap between the wealthy, the middle class, and the poor, most of that gap between the wealthy and everybody else is driven primarily by stock market participation. When you look at the data. So when you talk about building wealth for your family, one thing I want you to understand is this, because a lot of us are here because we care. We're here because we see a community suffering. We see a lot of problems that we can't solve by ourselves in this lifetime or the next. And I hate to bear the bad news to you, but you're not going to. There will never be a day where you're going to wake up and everything's perfect and wonderful in the black community, no matter how hard we try, no matter how many benefits we hold. But here's the best part about it, though. Here's what gives me hope. Here's what allows me to bounce out of bed and become optimistic about the future. You see, wealth building, nation building, empire building, it's not something that happens in a short period of time. It is something that happens across generations. It's also not a solo race. It is a relay race. Now, what does that mean? Imagine if I'm in a relay race and I'm up here chasing these other people that have spent 400 years stealing everything we had, right? They stole all our wealth. That's why black folks don't have a whole lot of wealth. It's because for 400 years we were blocked from opportunities. Reparations is not a debate. There's no debate to be had about whether or not reparations are deserved. The only debate is whether or not people are actually going to give a damn enough to give them to you. That's the debate. The debate is not whether they're deserved. So imagine that you are in a race and the guy that you're running against is 80 yards ahead of you. You're only going to run 100 meters. It doesn't matter how fast you are. You can be as fast as Usain Bolt, but you're not going to catch him. You're not going to catch up. Now, if you think it's a solo race, then why would you even try? Why would you even run? Right? I mean, you're not going to catch him. Right? But if you know it's a relay race, then the pressure's off. Why? Well, because you know that your job is not to catch the other person. Your job is to run as fast as you can and make sure you hand the baton off to the next person in a better position than you were in. So in this generation, we are but a speck in time. We might think that we're important, but we're not that important in the whole lineage of things. It's just like mathematically. A straight line is nothing more than an infinite number of dots. So imagine a straight line. We're a dot on that line, a dot. So the most that we can do is not solve every problem that's created over the last 400 years. That's too much to do. The best we can do is plant necessary seeds so that our children can pick up the baton in a better place than we were when we first got started. Because so you run as fast as you can, you hand the baton off, the next person runs as fast as they can, they hand it off. You might have the Usain Bolt on the third leg who can take what you left him or her and turn it into something very powerful. Our children, if they're given a few simple tools, can actually take what we have, what we leave them, and turn it into something great. Now, I'm going to give you a quick acronym to remember, because I don't remember exactly how much time they wanted me to talk, so I'm not going to over-talk you here, so forgive me if I do. I got 5 more minutes? Okay, good. I can do this in 5 minutes. All right. Here's what I want you to remember. It's an acronym. I created this model just for the black community in terms of understanding what I believe we can do when it comes to our kids. The most important thing any of us can do in this generation is plant the right seeds. We plant the right seeds, we're going to win this game. The acronym is KID. KID, just like KID. What does that stand for? KID stands for knowledge, investment, discipline. Knowledge, investment, discipline. Now, what does that mean? Knowledge. Knowledge means that every black child in this country at an early age, before the age of 12, should be taught the fundamentals of entrepreneurship, business ownership, and investing at an early age. And we may think that that's hard to do, but it's silly for us to think that that's difficult to do. It takes 157,680 hours for a child to go from age 0 to the age of 18. And it freaks me out how we have so many kids that hit the age of 18, can't read, can't write, can't do math, but somehow have memorized every single song on the radio. That's crazy to me. That's lunacy. That's insanity. It's coonery at the 18th level. It takes only about 1,000 hours to learn how to be a good entrepreneur. That's it. So you got a child, put them in a program, teach them at an early age that they don't have to have a boss unless they want one. Teach them the basics of ownership. Don't evaluate yourself by the type of job you have and how fancy your office is and how big your master's corporation is. That means nothing. What do you own? What is yours? When you die, can you leave that job to your child? When I talk to my daughters and we picking out dudes and I'm like, okay, find out what he owns. Talk to him about money for a while and see what he talks about. If he talks about what he's going to buy with his money, run away, because that means he's throwing his money away. But if he's talking about a plan, if he's talking about investing, owning, and buying things, that might be a keeper potentially, at least on the economic side. Now, money doesn't make for a good man. We know that. But it's a good start. In fact, I'm sorry to say this, maybe I'm old school when I say this, but I fundamentally believe that the black woman has a very difficult time respecting you as a man when you can't provide for that family, period. That's my opinion. Next, the I. What does the I stand for? The I stands for investment. Investment. Investing in your kids. What does that look like? We talked about stock market participation. Here's a little secret, and I've done all the math on this. My whole dissertation was all about the stock market, so I looked at all the data going back to 1872. And I'm going to tell you this. If a person simply takes $100 a month and invests it in the stock market, it doesn't matter which stock they buy, and they do that for 30 years for their child will have several $100,000 in liquid cash to begin their life with. They will have several, if not over $1 million. I set the bar low at $100 because almost anybody can afford $100. $25 a week, people throw that away on nothing. So you do that $100 a month for 30 years, your child will have plenty of money. Now, does that change everything? Not really, but imagine how differently your life would have been if you could have started at the age of 20 and 21 years old with $400,000 or $500,000 in the bank. How many choices would have been different? You would have bought your first home a little bit sooner. You would have been able to go to college without drowning in debt, like so many young people. You would have been able to get married without going into debt. You want to start a business, you need $10,000, you got $10,000. Most billion-dollar ideas in the black community die due to a lack of funding. That's the key. So, again, if you want to be serious, don't go to $100 a month, though. Go to $300 or $400 a month. That's less than what most of us spend on our car notes. And I imagine your child's future is worth more than a car note. Number 3, discipline. The D stands for discipline. Where does that come into play? Discipline matters because of this very simple fact. 70% of wealthy families lose all their wealth within one generation. Within one generation. Why is that? Well, because everything you learned, all the hustle you figured out, you don't pass that to your kids. You're spoiling them with Gucci bags and Mercedes Benzes and Air Jordans and all this other stuff. So when you teach your child discipline at an early age, that has a huge impact on whether or not they apply the knowledge and they apply the resources in a productive way. One experiment explains it all. They took a bunch of 5-year-olds, put them in a room, and they gave them a marshmallow. And they said, look, you can eat the marshmallow now if you want, or if you want to wait 10 minutes, we'll give you 2 marshmallows. And so some kids went ahead, they were like YOLO, they ate the marshmallow, they were done. Other kids were like, well, you know, I think I want this marshmallow now, but I think I'm gonna wait a couple minutes. I'm gonna get the big reward. So they waited around and they watched the kids in the room. They tortured them. The room had nothing but a table, a chair, a plate, and a marshmallow. That's all they had. And they had the camera on the kids. So the kids were sitting on their hands and they were singing to themselves, looking the other way, doing whatever they could to distract themselves. Now what they were doing was they were paying attention to the child's ability to delay gratification. And they followed these kids all throughout their lives. And you know what happened? The kids who were able to wait were more successful than the kids who were not able to wait in every measuring stick of quality of life. Income, their marriages lasted longer, they were happier, all these things, they were healthier, all these things. So, discipline is incredibly important. So remember that, KID, knowledge, investment, discipline.